So with this session, we're going to be exploring generative AI models used in marketing and the profound opportunities for personalisation, for optimization, and strategies that will enhance the customer experience. So please welcome ESAN.
Thank you very much. They say that you've made it if you can rip up your notes, walk onto stage and present without any notes. And I'm going to give that a test today, not because I had the courage to rip off my notes, but more importantly because I left them at home. So let's see how today goes. You guys be the judge. Let me know how I do at the end. Thank you for that great introduction, and thank you for having me here today. It's great to talk to this crowd about generative AI in marketing, in customer experience. As mentioned, I have the privilege of leading about 500 people who focus in this space: consultants, strategists, technologists, AI experts. And what I'd like to share with you today is what we're seeing in the Middle East region. What we're seeing are clients focus on, the type of transformations they're focusing on, and the reality that the bar is really lifting with the advent of Gen AI and sort of the mainstream use of AI. I loved what Ali talked about, the fact that ChatGPT brought this technology to the forefront to the point where all consumers are expecting that level of interactivity and ease of use. And that's probably one of the key reasons why the bar is completely lifted. And brands, organizations, if they don't act, they will fall behind. Consumers will start seeing the lack of AI-enabled interaction with your brand as a sign of it being outdated or as a sign of it being falling behind its competitors. It's a measure of quality. The same way that the design of your digital experience, the quality of your digital experience 4 or 5 years ago was definitely a sign. The same way that the degree of automation of e-services was a sign, this is the next thing that's going to directly impact brands. Let me make sure I can get this going. Yep. So one of the key things, there's a lot happening in this space. And on the left-hand side, there's a lot of content production and productivity in the marketing team tools available. Things like Adobe Firefly and things like similar technologies that help you create the content that you put out to your consumers. I'm going to maybe focus less on that space. And as that technology is evolving, it is within the remit of the marketing department to adopt it and bring efficiencies like that into the conversation. I want to focus more on the right-hand side, which is about how AI, and we'll talk about a few tools, is affecting the customer experience. From the top of the funnel, where your customers are just completely anonymous prospects, we're trying to reach them through advertising or marketing, all the way to closing and sales and then service afterwards. The bar is lifting, and the type of experience that we can offer our customers is completely changing, and that's what I'd like to focus on today. But taking a step back, all of the folks in the room, you're in the marketing department, in the product department, you have a customer and marketing strategy that you're currently executing on. And typically, the top line and bottom line of this is about growing your customer base. It's about bringing efficiencies, reducing the cost of service, and improving customer stickiness through a better experience. Retaining more customers, upselling more customers, again, through a better experience and a better brand experience. The hypothesis I want to put to you is that Gen AI is changing this fundamentally in a way that we have to completely rethink our marketing, product, brand strategies and heavily adopt some of these examples that I'd like to walk you through. And we're seeing across the region and globally, a lot of clients are shifting this way. It's not always homogeneous. Sometimes it's about, let me invest a little bit here, let me go after setting up a chatbot on my website, or let me automate some parts of my marketing funnel to actually get stuff out faster or approve stuff faster. What I want to put to you today is that this has to be relooked at holistically, in the sense that all facets of a marketing product go-to-market strategy will change or has changed as a result of Gen AI, and as a result of the fact that it's become common use and part of our lingo now. So it's not just about just sticking a chatbot on the website. It is looking at this more holistically. And we found that there are 7 key elements that have completely been disrupted. Now I'm going to try and power through these relatively quickly because I've got limited time today. But hopefully you'll take some ideas and some examples of how the landscape is changing. The first one is around customer support and service. This is after you've closed the deal, after the customer is engaged with you. So we'll talk about top of funnel examples later, but this is once we get into a service provider mode, the sort of day and age where it's about menus and forms and e-services are almost numbered. Customers are transitioning to this world where they expect a conversational UI. They expect the core system that's providing them services to service them the same way that they would get a service from a call center. They want that fluidity of interacting with humans and be able to do large, complex transactions and set of services across the board without necessarily needing to remember the steps. What do I need to engage? Which form do I need to fill? How do I fill it? A mundane example is that in Dubai, if I need to go and renew my license, there's a few steps I need to go through. I need to know that I've paid my fines. There might be insurance steps I need to continue. There's obviously the renewal process. The expectation in a future world, and the great thing is that the RTA experience is delivering that or building towards it. The expectation in the future world is that that entire process happens. Not just happens because those number of transactional steps that I had to remember previously now are automated and the behind-the-scenes AI knows what to do. But more importantly, at a high degree of maturity, it will be proactively reaching out to me and letting me know what I need to do ahead of the curve. This level of service, this level of raising of the bar is quite significant, and we see a lot of brands struggling with this. And it doesn't have to come at a huge cost of revamp. A lot of the base services that do exist within the organization, a lot of the base digital services that do exist, building on top of them and providing this conversational AI on top of them will go a long way to improve the customer experience and deliver what consumers are expecting now. Personalization. With Gen AI, we now have the ability to really personalize down to a segment of one. Movable ink, if you haven't worked with it, please check it out. Amongst many tools, it's one of the really great platforms that both top-of-funnel personalization, based on whether it's your first-party data or combined first-party data with traffic analysis of what this particular user has done, it will provide some really good personalization, both top-of-funnel but also within the process. And what I mean by this is that really, over time, zoning in on what your consumer wants, what state they're in, how they are being serviced is becoming quite critical. Sort of gone are the days where we would segment our consumers based on age group or gender, come up with 5 or 6 segments, and then personalize to that. While that is important, the shift is now happening whereby it's about personalization to a segment of one. Content generation, and there's a lot of examples of content generation in the productivity cycle within marketing departments, but I want to draw your attention to examples like what Zalando is doing. Zalando is a fashion brand out of Europe, and what they're doing is that they're using live content generation to actually attract more customers. And this is based on their knowledge of the customers, based on the fashion choices of the customer. They will then predict and promote solutions, end-to-end solutions around the fashion choices that customer makes, from all the different, from clothing to accessories, etc. And it's all generated real-time content generation, but it's very niche and unique to that particular brand. These examples are popping up across a number of brands, and we're seeing a few brands in the Middle East taking this step as well. But I want you to think about content generation beyond the core, how do I write content, how do I generate images, but how do I use it to affect the core of my business. Predictive analytics. Predictive analytics has always been a space of complexity. We need a data scientist, and that's not going to go away. However, what LLMs offer us, what generative AI offers us, with a degree of training, the analysis of the data that we have, being able to come up with themes, being able to come up with trends out of that, and then real-time feeding that back into the cycle of customizing and personalizing for our audience has become something that's very normal. And again, marketeers, heads of products, folks that are focusing on interacting with your consumers need to rethink the real-time nature of this and need to rethink how narrow they can make these decisions around predictive analytics. And again, for me, it comes back to rethinking your marketing strategy. Voice, image, handwriting recognition. Again, it's become very normal to use multiple channels to communicate with the brand. I purchased a car insurance. At the start, it went through a website, a few clicks, but then it essentially flipped to a number of WhatsApp messages going back and forward between me and the agent, and then eventually getting my forms to sign and submit. The expectations from the consumers would be that that process would continue to happen. That process is a very personal process. I did it in my own time, but it was through a number of voice messages, no more complex forms, etc. Now, in my example, on the other side was an actual human being. This is now very achievable for brands to actually achieve that level of automation and personal communication with the consumer, but on the other side, it's a ChatGPT 4.0 or something similar. So again, you have to rethink. The channels are no longer just a website and a mobile app. The channels are much wider, are gravitating towards more voice, hand notes, written material rather than having to fill forms. And our ability to easily process it and consume it and bring it within the organization is very accessible. So again, it's something that highly recommend you to rethink. Feedback analysis. The channels that you own in terms of receiving feedback will still remain. However, the third-party channels, such as people complaining about a brand on Twitter or posting something on TripAdvisor, etc., are growing, and more people gravitate to those because they know that the brand's own channels are curated. So again, what generative AI can do for us, and a lot of brands, Walmart is an example, there's a hospitality client in this region that is heavily using this. What brands can do is use generative AI agents that are tailored to focus on scanning and bringing specific feedback points, and then even having that loop back into loyalty, gifts, fixing the problem, so on and so forth. So that remit, which used to be quite complex and you need to have a huge user base to justify the spend, now has become so inexpensive that almost all brands can adopt and use for processing feedback and then acting on that feedback. And then finally, the seventh theme that we're seeing is that in training field force, there's a lot of use of generative AI to actually simulate a happy customer, a grumpy customer. For example, Ritz-Carlton uses this quite interesting use case whereby training their staff who are receiving customers at the point of registration to deal with difficult customers due to whatever reason, but also difficult situations. Something's gone wrong, the room is not ready, etc. This level of training previously was very narrow, and we would do it within the context of research with specific focus groups. Now it's becoming so much wider, and you can use platforms like ChatGPT, similar LLMs that are trained to actually act as that grumpy customer, act as that fraudulent customer in the case of Allstate, and be able to help train field force to detect that. So those are the 7 things. One other thing I want to say before I close off on the pitfalls is that this space is evolving very fast. I think that's obvious. What you plan and when you think about your marketing strategy needs to be not thinking about what you get right now out of the technology that, for example, is ChatGPT 4 or similar LLMs, but you really need to think forward. We've gone through this experience that we've tried to design systems around, for example, ChatGPT 3.5's capabilities, and before we know it, everything that we've thought about has become obsolete by the release of ChatGPT 4, and arguably that same process will happen when you deal with if you're trying to plan it on ChatGPT 4, by the time you release it to market, some of that functionality will become obsolete. So plan forward, plan towards what is going to be released in future releases of these platforms. The other point, which is one of the things that you need to watch out for, I'll jump to, is that you need to have an experimentation mentality. This cannot be done through a fixed mindset of 3-month, 6-month, year-long projects. It needs to be iterative, it needs to be learning, it needs to see what new technologies are released, which a lot is happening in this space, and take an experimentation mentality to it. But that aside, there's a few other quick pitfalls. They're on the screen. Privacy is still a major concern. Data and content, you can use a lot of unstructured data, but still the core first-party customer data needs to have structure. Data sovereignty, obviously in this region, quite an issue, given that not all providers that we're going to be using is there. The profile of a creepy stalker brand is always a challenge, so that line of how far you take personalization is important. And finally, don't forget keeping the human in the loop. We are not there yet for this technology to run by itself, both in terms of legal ramifications, but also customer service ramifications. We need to keep human in the loop across this. All right. They told me I've got to finish it in 15 minutes. I've gone 1 minute over. Thank you for your attention. Hopefully I was able to present without my notes successfully, and hope to see you at one of these events in the future. Thank you very much.